I was at my desk, and it had been 9 months, and I was just like, I got to start looking for a way out because this isn't working, right? I'm not getting my paycheck. I'm not getting my commissions.
Is there a way to know that if you keep grinding, there will be results? How do you know if you're just being stubborn or if you're being persistent?
I think the hard part for entrepreneurs is they don't want to get told their baby's ugly, right?
Yes.
Like they only want to say the good stuff about it. And so when you're asking
A
it,
bad hire can cost you so much time, effort, money. And so
welcome to Hello Grow.
The #1 growth podcast in the world. Today we have Soren Simonson. Am I saying that last name correctly?
You got it, Carlos.
Amazing. I'm going to introduce Soren today. Soren graduated from UVU in marketing, then started at Web Equity in account management. That's where he got his first taste of sales. Then moved up to mid-market sales, then director of sales. After Web Equity, you wanted some experience in enterprise sales, so you moved to Workfront. You stayed there for about a year and a half. Had some frustrations, but learned a lot about enterprise sales. We're going to hear a ton about that. Then moved to SaltStack as an account executive, and then got promoted to regional director of enterprise sales. And now you are at Transfer as director of enterprise sales.
Yeah, that sums it up.
Sorry, we're excited, man.
Yeah, I'm excited as well.
I told you during lunch that this is one of the... I've been very excited for this one for a long time. So let's talk about, you started at Web Equity in account management, and then that's where you had your first taste of sales. Tell us a little bit about that and why the transition and why did you stay?
Yeah, no, I mean, I kind of fell into the tech scene here in Utah. As we know, there's a lot of tech going on. And I just fell into it, right? I had a brother working at the company and got a job in account management. Really didn't know that I wanted to be into sales until I got there and saw really the sales lifestyle, the deals, the energy, what was happening. So, yeah, fell into sales, was really successful there at Web Equity. It actually started out as a company called Marketecture, and the technology changed, and it ended up being Web Equity. And so got to see a lot of ups and downs and growth from a early stage startup. And, yeah, just fell in love with sales and the opportunity you have to advance and learn and get a new challenge every single day. So there was a lot that I loved from that experience, and so a lot of things at a young age as well.
And then after Web Equity, you wanted experience in enterprise sales. Why is that?
Yeah, so I mean, as a sales rep, I think you quickly have to figure out what you want to do as far as there's different selling motions, right? There's quick, transactional. Is that more your personality? Is it more strategic? And I see myself as more of a problem solver, a strategic thinker. I like to solve puzzles and solve new equations and things of that sort. So really wanted to, I don't think I was getting that as much from the SMB mid-market as I would have liked. So seeing enterprise sales and talking to people in that arena really made me want to pursue working with those largest companies in the world, right? How I could then go tote, that I solve problems for these Fortune 500 companies. And so shopping around, I really didn't have anybody giving me the opportunity to go straight into an enterprise role without the experience. And so I chose to take on that more junior role at Workfront because I had the opportunity to support people that were working, the Home Depots, Charles Schwab, Coca-Cola's of the world, and see how they ran deals. Multiple reps would run deals into these accounts and strategically work these 6-7 figure deals. And so that was the transition, was how do I get this exposure and this experience and see how can you successfully work these strategic enterprise companies? And that's really what my goal was there.
And I'm very curious to know about that transition. Right off the bat, what was the biggest difference going from SMB to enterprise? You got there, okay, this won't work, I was doing over there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's just patience, I think. I mean, there's a lot of patience and critical thinking and stratagem in all that you're doing, right? There's more stakeholders. It's more complex. The deal cycles are longer. So figuring out the long play, right? Because a lot of people, especially making that transition, can get antsy into, you know, not closing anything. And you know, that was next. I went over to SaltStack, but really, if we wanted to talk about that, when I got into that closing role and was working these strategic enterprise accounts, I didn't close my first deal for 9 months, and every week I thought, "This is my last week. I'm done. I'm not going to be here next week. They're not going to have me here," because they were toting a 3-month close cycle, right? So essentially, I should have closed deals 6 months prior to that, and really, so you just have to stay focused on the end goal, what you have in mind. And I believed in myself, right? I believed in what I knew and what I was doing. And so I took what I had learned and what I was doing and said, I'm just going to put my head down and keep grinding. And it paid off in a big way, especially at SaltStack. And so I think that's a big thing in enterprise that you have to learn is it usually takes a long time if you're going to get those big strategic relationships.
What happened during those first 9 months that took you? Why did it take you 9 months to?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think so. SaltStack was a very complex sell, right? It dealt with IT infrastructure, IT management, the full life cycle of servers, networking devices, IoT, all those types of things. So not only was I still really new to enterprise sales, I was new to the product. And so trying to learn this product as well as sales and do it as a newbie, as a rookie, I just think compounded that. And I also think this is something else we can talk about later in the podcast, but I think the expectations as far as the closing cycle was not set appropriately, right? And that's another thing with expectations is having the right expectations going in. And so sales orgs and sales departments can do, they can tell you, hey, we have a 20-day sales cycle. We have a 30-day sales cycle. And sometimes they do that for marketing purposes, for excitement, right? And I think more realistically, that sales cycle was 6 to 9 months. So I wasn't actually behind. I just personally had that on me that I thought I was behind, right? And that pressure on me until deals started falling, right? And then I climbed that pole and I started closing large 7-figure deals and had all the confidence in the world, right? And I just had to wait for some of them to come to fruition.
So for someone that right now that's listening to the podcast and they're thinking of making that about making that transition from SMB to enterprise, or someone like me who we've had a solid playbook for SMB and now we just finished building our playbook for enterprise, what do you tell a person that's making that transition?
Yeah, I'd say do it for the right reasons, right? It's not, enterprise doesn't have to be the next stepping stone in your career path if that's not the right fit for you. Sometimes I know a lot of people that SMB mid-market, they make a great living, and that is exactly their speed, right? They like those quick wins, those quick dopamine hits, right? They like seeing the cash flow in on a weekly basis. They don't want to go through the procurement cycles and all the things that go with enterprise. So it would be, what is your end career goal? Where would you want to be, right? Do you want to be working those big accounts in those long cycles, or are you right where you want to be? And, you can progress up that in that area in leadership, or just be a individual contributor making really good money for the rest of your career. So there's lots of different ways to look at it. So just know what you want to do. Don't think it as you need to progress there to be at the next step of your career.
I love that. Court, I have one more question, then I know you have quite a few as well. I do have a lot more questions, but I want to hear yours, Court. At SaltStack, you went from being a single contributor to a leader, right? So at Workfront, you were a single contributor, then at SaltStack, you became a leader. What's the difference in skill set that it takes to be a high producer salesperson and a great sales leader?
Yeah, and this is something, everybody wish they had the answer to, right? And sometimes you think a great sales rep will be a great leader. Sometimes it can be the opposite, right? It doesn't mean just because you're hitting your quota, you'd make a great sales leader. I think it's the looking at the bigger picture of the outcomes and what the business is trying to accomplish, right? Other than your personal paycheck. Because a lot of sales rep, I hate to say it, but, we're typically greedy, right? We're known for, looking out for our interests and getting our paycheck. And so trying to find a way as a sales leader to manage these reps to, grow themselves in forecasting and just keeping the morale. There's a lot of different things that you're looking out for outside of just closing deals. And so for me, it was focusing on the strategy of how to get everybody to sail in the same direction, right? The phrase I like to use is burn your boats, right? It's becoming more popular. How do you get everybody to burn your boats, right? How do you get everybody to buy in and move in the direction, especially at a startup, right? Because startups have ups and downs. I mean, you guys know there's yeah, there's good years, there's bad years, there's changes you make where you're like, this is going to work great, and it's just terrible, and you're on the hook for it, right? And so, how do you get everybody to buy in and say, hey, we made a mistake, but we're course correcting and we're all learning from it, and we're growing, right? We're toddlers, right? We're learning to crawl, we're learning to walk, and then we're going to start running. So a lot of things that go into that, but just continue to progress and care about the people that you're managing, right? Caring about their progression and where leading them to will ultimately help their livelihood and their growth, as well as the company's.
So from the things you said, these are the things that I gathered. You can't be just worried about your own paycheck. You gotta be invested in people's growth. You use the analogy of burning the boats, which I love, which means getting people to buy into the vision and be one as a team towards one goal for the sales organization. And then you also talked about understanding the outcomes, the outcomes for the business. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to accomplish goals, right? And every startup, whether it's to 3x our revenue year over year, right? 2x, 3x to become that unicorn company, or hit $100 million in revenue. It's how do we get people excited about the success of the business, right? How do we get them excited and aligned, all their compensation, goals, objectives, incentives lead behavior, right? And so how do we get them their compensation structured to the company goals, right? That's what I mean by that is, so everybody is going in the same direction, ultimately attaining the same mission, same goal, and everybody's excited and successful when we do that.
I love that.
Tons of thoughts. One, I think what you said, Carlos, I think just taking a sec to talk about burning the boats. You moved from Brazil, you invested, you got a place here, you made the choice, which I don't think most people know, that to get your visa, you got to spend 2 years not traveling for that whole process to go through, which means that you have your wife's family, your family back in Brazil, and you can't leave to any other country, and you've made some tough decisions. And I think people always say, I want to keep one door open. Like, what if the grass is greener somewhere else? What if it's going to be better if I make this next leap or this next decision? And because they always have one foot out, it's like running a race with one leg. Like, you're just never going to make progress. Instead of looking out to try and make the right decision, people that burn the boats make their decision right. And so I'm glad that you brought that up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you talk about that. I remember the exact moment at Salt Stack. I was at my desk, and it had been 9 months, and I was just like, I got to start looking for a way out, because this isn't working, right? I'm not getting my paycheck. I'm not getting my commissions. This isn't working for me. And then, at my desk, I was like, I had to decide, are you all in or are you all out? Because I wasn't going to kind of be that gray area. And when I said, I'm all in, I'm going to put my head down, it was only a matter of a couple of weeks where like my situation turned around completely. And if I would have jumped ship right then, which I haven't talked about, but a number of people did, right? There's a number of people that left before they saw the fruits of their labor. And if I would have done the same thing, I don't know where I would be at, right? That year at SaltStack, I saw a 5x increase in my annual income, right? I closed some huge deals that if I jumped ship before I saw it, it was just, I would have been digging before I struck gold. And so, yeah, making that decision and then going after it is huge.
We were with a bunch of, we have some adult leaders and a youth group in our church, and we were in the mountains camping, teaching them how to build fires. And we went through this process, and there was this competition. And it said, okay, if you can build a fire just with whatever's out there, then here's your reward. If you can build a fire with flint and steel, then here's your reward. And if you can build a fire with matches, then here's your reward. And we got out there, and I was with this group of these young guys, and I was like, okay, guys, we're going to win the top tier award, right? Because we're going to go and build it with just a stick. And we're going to, you push it against you hollow out a stick, and then you get another stick, and you push it against and try and make friction right into it. Right. And do that over and over again. And we just couldn't figure it out. It's like, okay, scrap that plan. We're going to go do flint and steel. And one of the other guys is like, he knows that he's done this before. He knows what he's doing. So he's just patiently just over there, just like that, over and over again. And it doesn't work for us, so we jump to the flint and steel. So we go and we get all the kindling for this flint and steel to blown away. We got a couple sparks, and we just grinding the flint and steel. Oh, man, it's not working. It's not coming about. And my buddy's with this stick. And we can't get anything with the flint and steel. It's like, all right, we're gonna go switch it up. And so we go grab the matches. Like, at least we're gonna get some award. And by this point, like, our stuff had all blown away, all of our kindling. And so we go grab it back up. And like, it doesn't need to be as good because we're going to have matches. So we light the first match and drop it on. And then just dissipates. And then again and again and again. And we're on our last match. And we're panicky and in a fluster. We don't want to be the only ones not to start a fire. And we light it, and the wind blows the flame out. And I look over, and my buddy, boom, just... it started, and the fire goes, and he puts in his hand and kind of blowing on it and adds to it, and he has this roaring fire when he's stuck with something that wasn't the best situation of all those. Flint and steel or matches would have been better, but he made it the right situation because he's stuck with it longer. So I love that you shared that.
That's awesome.
This brings up, we've talked so many times about this in the podcast. How do you know that, so using your example, Court, how do you know, is there a way to know that if you keep grinding, there will be results? How do you know if you're just being stubborn or if you're being persistent?
I would love that within the context of, does my product offering suck or does my pitch suck?
Yes. Yeah. Or I'm selling for this company, not getting results, and should I go and sell for somebody else?
Yeah, I mean... no, there's no magic ball. I wish, as you know, you could join a company and say, I know I'm going to be successful. I know it's going to work. And there's not, right? There's no guarantee for success anywhere. However, the one thing you can take away is there's been a lot of areas I've been in where I've failed miserably, right? And even at Marketecture in those early days, you know, the company, I had no idea what I was doing. And so there was so many mistakes that I made. And now in interviews or jobs or anything past that, I use that as credibility of I've made the wrong decision and I know what not to do now, right? And it's not doing what is incorrect is almost as valuable as what works because you know what roads not to go down. So that is definitely a value. If you are all in and, you know, it doesn't work out in the end, you still have something to take from it. You're like, that's not the right vertical for me. That wasn't the right product. I don't thrive under this leadership. There's a lot of different things you can take away from that. So no, there's no crystal ball at the end of the road. And from a product and just a selling motion, I think that's a good question. I'd probably go to your leadership, right? And if you, or your mentor or whoever you have in your life to talk about, you know, where you're at and your skill sets and gauge what you're doing, because you're right. You might say I'm all in, but it might not be a good fit. And that's, again, something you got to figure out. right? When I was at Salt Stack, I said, I want to be in enterprise sales, right? I want a complex product. I like cybersecurity. I like my management. I don't see many competitors doing what we're doing, and I know it's going to be successful, right? And so all of these things came into play, and I was like, I'm in the right place. I know now it's up to me. It's up to me to be successful. Whereas if I looked at it and said, I don't get along with my management. This product, we have tons of competitors we're always losing to. We have a lot of internal problems. It's like, maybe this isn't a great fit. Answer those questions, create pros and cons, and get a checklist of what's important to you in a company, right? Is it their strategic growth? It's, what series are they on? Who's in the leadership? What experience do the leaders have, right? Those are all important things you should ask yourself in considering in these positions, right? Should all be things you look at and whatever else is important to you. And so I think those are, what you would look at when making that decision of, am I all in or am I not all in? So hopefully that helps answer that question.
That's a great answer.
I think it helps extremely shed extreme clarity on it. The kind of the formula that I was coming up with as you were talking is asking the question first, does this exist in nature? Is there somebody that's done what I've done, that's currently living or has lived, that's gone through this process? Like, does this actually exist? I see so many people oftentimes that say, I want to be the first to do this, or I don't care what the critics say. Like, awesome, have that mentality, but also show me where what you're trying to accomplish exists in nature or in a parallel. If you're doing it in one sport, where did it exist in another sport? I think you hit on ingredients. Do you have the right ingredients, and does the business have the right ingredients? And you've talked about strategy, and strategy is matching up those ingredients. Does the business have what I need, and do I have what the business needs, and does the market demand what the business can provide?
Yeah.
Is there alignment between those? And then the last two that I was thinking of is gut. Like, what is your gut telling you? Like, that spidey sense. We had Cole talk about that spidey sense. And then the very last one is, the last part of that story is we were super hyper energized. Like, we did all these things to start the fire. But our buddy, who did the same thing over and over again, at the end, his hands were blistered because of the stick and because he was holding the fire in his hand. That's how he got it up. And so I think you could metaphorically ask yourself, have I done what I've needed to do? Put in enough reps that I have the blisters. Like, you're 9 months in, you've put in reps. It's not like, I tried it, doesn't work. It's, you tried it and tried it and tried it. Like, of course, nothing valuable is going to work on your first time. Do you have the blisters to actually prove that it's not going to work?
Yeah. Something I don't talk about a lot either from those Salt Stack experiences. I didn't know anything about IT, right? I came in and I was naive. People would say acronyms that I had no idea what they meant. I just nod my head,
People you're selling to?
Yeah, people I'm selling to. Yeah. It's like,
That was my first year.
We're speaking to engineers and infrastructure and data and these guys that know a lot more than I do, and so I have no idea. And at a point, I hated. Every once in a while, it's fine of saying, I don't know the answer. I'll go ask somebody, and I'll get back to you on it, right? That's completely fine. But when it's, 10 times in a row, when they say, do you have this? I don't know. I'll get back to you. Can you do this? I don't know. I'll get back to you. To me, it was just, I don't know my job. And so I went out of my way to one of my sales engineers, one of the smart guys, and said, I want to better understand this product, right? After hours, I said, can you help me? I took a Windows tower. I'm probably not even going to use the right terminology, but I took a Windows tower. We wiped it clean. We downloaded open source.
Kids listening don't know what a Windows tower, like an actual computer that had a cord that went up to a monitor. You took this box part.
We took it. We wiped it clean. We put open source Ubuntu on it, which is an open source software which we could install Salt Stack and do these different things that, to my knowledge, no other sales rep at the company ever did that, right, to understand. So after that year mark, I started to become somebody in the office that people were asking questions like, do we do this? Do we do this? Right. And so and that's when I realized, I'm intelligent, I can do this. And I've gone above and beyond, and I have those blisters. Right. And that's when I started seeing success. And so, um, yeah, that was something that, not everybody knows. And I didn't tout around the office. Oh yeah, I built an Ubuntu server and did all this. But it's something I did personally because I knew it'd make me better serve my customer and better be able to sell the product that I was speaking about.
Grant Cardone, and I know that, Court, you have your feelings about Grant Cardone. He wrote a book called Sell or Be Sold, and he talks about that. There's the two sides of it: understanding the product, and do you really believe that product is solving? Are you sold on that product, right? Because if you're not convinced, your eyes tell a story as well. People in the way you're speaking, the way that you're conducting, the way that you're talking about the product, people buy that. So I love that you mentioned that, just understanding what you're selling and you're really convinced. And how are you going to convince others if you're not? So when making that decision, if you're selling at the right place, ask those two questions, right? And look for those answers. Do you really understand? And are you so convinced that you can't wait to tell others about the thing that you're selling? I want to go back to something that you said, Soren. You talked about, and I really like that you said that. You said, well, grind and work really hard, and I'm paraphrasing it. If it doesn't work out for you, at least you've learned a ton. And then you talked about some mistakes, and you at least learned, and now you can go in meetings and you can say, I've made this mistake before. For sales leaders that are listening to this, can you talk about some of those mistakes that you made?
Yeah, I mean, is there a specific area? I mean, from personal attainment or hiring or?
The first thing that comes to mind.
I think one of the biggest mistakes, especially for sales leaders or orgs, is the hiring process, right? A bad hire can cost you so much time, effort, money. And so really honing in who you're hiring and why you're hiring them and the criteria around that is huge. And I usually focus on the three of the quotients of intelligence. So when I'm hiring, I focus on IQ, right? And I usually tell myself you have to have at least two of the three of these. IQ, right? Your intelligence, your EQ, your emotional quotient, or TQ, which is becoming a lot more important, which is technical quotient, right? Your ability to learn and adapt to technologies is hugely important. And that one I'm grading a lot more on, especially from a sales perspective, as we continue to leverage additional sales engagement platforms, prospecting, and everything that's included in that. Your employees that cannot leverage technology in a way to amplify what they're doing are going to fall behind. It is what it is, right? We are advancing so rapidly at a clip that if you are still in a Rolodex, if you are still, I know you have experience with that.
Yeah, right, not me.
If you're still in a Rolodex, if you're not adapting to the change, it's going to leave you behind. So, two of those three are big keys for me, and how they fit into your organization are definitely something that I've learned of. Don't make a hasty hire. I have made quick hires even at transfer, where I was slated to hire 21 people within a matter of a couple of months, right? We had a big goal to hit, and I made a quick hire on an individual, and it didn't work out, and it ultimately cost me 3 months of pain and agony, and trying to coach that person to where they needed to be, but it just wasn't a fit, right? And so, yeah, hiring and making sure it's the right fit and not rushing that process is huge.
Is there a particular hiring process or hiring methodology that you recommend to sales leaders?
No, not for me. I mean, it's been different at every company. It's been different to the sector, the vertical, and so just defining what's successful. So, we at Transfer are seeing a lot of, there's a great migration out of education, as you might seen. So a lot of teachers are leaving the teaching field due to political and financial and other circumstances. And so our education arm of the business is seeing a lot of success recruiting former educators and administrators and people of that nature, they're typically more senior. They have connections and relationships in those areas, and so that works really well for us. But if I don't know if that would work for other companies. So figuring out again what works for you and what works for your company. I'd like to say it's a crystal ball, and there's a one size fits all, but figuring out the main goals of what you want in a person, and then seeing who fits that criteria and how you can continue to scale that.
Soren, I don't think people listening don't know what you did for Aspen. Carlos came into this role a year and a half ago.
Yep.
And the role was just brand new, right? We had founder-led growth up until that point, kind of this brute force selling approach, which it was more artistic than that. I'm not giving it the credit that it deserves, but there wasn't a process. There was nothing repeatable, scalable. It was a highly capable salesperson that was a founder of the business going out and selling. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs get there where they hit the $1 or $2 or $3 million mark and say, okay, I need to pivot, and I actually need to have this refined because we can't grow. We grew at good percentages, but it's because we did the same $500,000 of new growth every single year. And now we need to grow at 20% every year, or 50% every year, or double, triple.
Yeah.
I would love for you to talk through that process that you talked to us through. I think that's high value add, and some significant changes came into Aspen when you implemented a lot of these things. So if you could put yourself back a year to when you were helping us establish these processes, think about a company that is founder-led growth up to a point and needs to start scaling. What's step one? And then I would like to go through a few steps up to maybe 5 million in revenue.
Yeah, Carlos and I were just talking about that at lunch.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's an evolution, right? It's an evolution. At my current company, as I mentioned, I was employee 12, and now we're over just about to eclipse 300 employees. So a lot of growth, a lot of changes, a lot of development. And so with you guys at Aspen, I mean, yeah, you guys had been doing phenomenal, but there was really no structure or methodology behind it, right? And we were talking about at lunch, Carlos, what is your methodology? Currently, and my preference is MedPick, right? Of documenting and going through an enterprise sales motion of covering your bases, right? How do you get predictable? And one of the biggest things is, as you mentioned, you grow 30%, you grow 50%. How do you know what your growth is? And as you're growing, VCs are big on, do you know your business, right? Do you know your scale, your market, and your sales department? And if you can't accurately depict what you're going to do, you're not going to be taken as seriously as you should be, right? So creating a methodology that is scalable and like leveraging a MedPick. So every sales rep has the same understanding of what's going to close, why it's going to close. If you go to your sales rep and say, hey, when's this deal going to close? And they say, next month. And you say, well, what's the paper process? And they say, I have no freaking clue. How do you have any confidence that it's going to close next month? You don't. So you have no predictability. And so from your leadership perspective or from an investor perspective, there is no confidence in your business and where you're going to go. So that's what we helped instill in Aspen is how do you get more predictable? How do you know your business? How do you own your business? And just implement very simple aspects of forecasting and playbooks and structures that people can live by and scale. So
can you get into the tactics of what that looked like when you came into Aspen? What was like, okay, you asked a bunch of questions, you had some understanding. What was the first 30 days, and then what was the next 30 days and the next 30?
Yeah, I think, Carlos, what did we start? I mean, I'd love to, I'll flip this on you. What was the biggest thing, when we came in that you felt you were lacking and that changed around with a simple instruction or simple advice?
I believe in our first meeting, you asked me, who is your ICP? And I had no idea what that meant. So the biggest thing for me, and I just if my team is listening to this now, they're gonna know where it came from. But I love playbooks now, and you got me hooked on it. So it was the playbook, just building, asking, understanding who the ideal customers were, building those profiles, detailed profiles, and then from there building the message, and the sequence and how to close. So the playbook was the biggest game changer that we had.
Yeah. So as simple as that, right? It's I asked him, what's your ICP, right? And your ideal customer profile is what that stands for. And so, because Carlos had all these great ideas, and I was like, well, who are you selling to, right? Who are you targeting? Who are you going after? And if you don't know that, right, that's the basic building block of, well, this is our target demographic, and now we can scale off of that, right? We can pivot and we can grow, but understanding where you're going to get the most bang for your buck, where you're going to get the biggest return, and where to focus your efforts and your team. Because your team, if you don't put them in a direction, right, they're all going to use what they think is best. They might use prior knowledge or lack of knowledge to go after things that might be things they shouldn't be spending time on, right? They might be a super hard worker, but not be spending their time in the right places unless you know and have a structure or a playbook to guide them into the areas where they'll see success, right? And that's part of our job as management, is to get them to be successful, right? That is part, and that is why we go into management, is to get the individuals on our team to a place where they are financially stable, where they're in a position to grow their career paths. And, if you're not getting into management for those reasons, I think, look into why you're getting into management, because that's the ultimate goal, is how do we get these people to be successful? Because at the same time, sales is the tip of the spear. And we talked about this at lunch as well, Carlos, is the morale, right? And so putting those things in place, you're going to get more success. You're going to see more success when you implement ICPs, playbooks, and a structured way for people to prospect and close business. And because morale in a sales department is probably the number one killer of any small company. I've seen it at a couple of startups where there's just turnover of the sales department, and then it's like your sail or your rudder, it's just out of commission, right? You're stuck, and then you have to start the process over, re-ramp, retrain, and if they turn over, it's the exact same thing. And if they're at the tip of the spear saying we can't sell our product, that's going to poison the rest of the company. It's going to trickle throughout. And so keeping a happy, hungry, well-fed sales force is ultimately going to, again, lead to all that growth and be the best indicator that you're a company worth investing in or growing, and you're on the right path.
I think one of the brilliant things about bringing you on as a consultant at that point is, I think it's a tendency you have. So tons of entrepreneurs are salespeople, but the sales that they did doesn't always. I did door-to-door sales. It had nothing to do. I mean, other than you close, kind of. You actually don't really close much in this business. It's a very different sell, and you also have a lot of entrepreneurs who are really, really creative, analytical, engineering types, technical types that don't have a sales background. And I think their tendency is to go and code a solution to a problem that they see in the world and they're deeply passionate about. And then they go and hire a Soren. They say, I'm going to go find a highly capable salesperson to come on and to grow our sales. But they haven't, the disconnect that happens there is you have a salesperson who hasn't seen the last 3 years of this startup going and trying to push something that still actually needs to be calibrated correctly. And so having a consultant come on in those early days, instead of outsourcing the sale, learn to sell as the founder, and maybe have that consultant with you shoulder to shoulder, as you did on some phone calls, on some pitches, on some emails, say, hey, you could tweak this and tweak this. But it's extremely difficult and impossible probably, and lazy to say, I'm going to outsource this first scaling, going from brute force selling, founder-led selling, to the playbook has to be internal and could be done with a consultant. Do you agree with that, or do you
I
feel
know
like
I
you
do.
feel
I was
differently?
going to add, and I don't, you might want to cut this out, Court. But I remember the part of being an entrepreneur or the owner of a company is you are so excited about the product that all you want to do is talk about the product, right? How it's going to change lives. So Court did his first call, and I wasn't on it, and he calls me up after, and he goes, "Yeah, we had this amazing call. I told him about this feature. I told him about this product. I told him about this, and this, and this." And I was like, I paused, and I was like, "Court," I said, I said, "What was their main pain point? Like, what were they trying to address?" He's like, "I didn't ask that." And I said, "Well, do they have any timelines?" He's like, "We didn't get to that." And I said, well, that's part of the discovery, right? You have to understand if it's a mutual fit, because he came out. Well, I like to call it happy ears. When a dog, their ears shoot up and their tail's wagging. And so we started learning about discovery at that point, and how do we address and optimize what we're talking about to what they actually need? Because the last thing we want to do is waste their time or talk about features that aren't important to them, even though they're very important to us or other customers. They could care less about it. And so, those types of things I think are great to have, because you want that passion, you want that knowledge of the product, you want all of that, but you also want to rein it in to make sure you are selling and painting the best picture possible for that prospect, that customer, or whoever you're speaking with.
I think the hard part for entrepreneurs is they don't want to get told their baby's ugly, right?
Yes.
Like they only want to say the good stuff about it. And so when you're asking a discovery question or a pain point or a qualifying question, of course my product applies to everyone.
Yeah.
It doesn't actually apply to everyone. And so having a consultant to keep you emotionally mature in those conversations, to say what is fact, what are the real ingredients, what's the real feedback and the real signs and signals that we're getting here, rather than just what are you passionate about.
No, I was just going to add to all of that. Court and I were having lunch with a highly successful enterprise leader of a very large organization the other day, and he said, "Why wouldn't you ask for the problems? Why wouldn't you discover the problems? It's a hack. It's a cheat code. Because you find out the problems, you talk about the product, now you can explain how your product is going to solve those problems. It's literally a cheat code. Why wouldn't you? It's not more, a lot of sales reps might look at it in a way, it's uncomfortable to ask those questions. I don't want to go through. But really, why wouldn't you? It's a cheat code. But so I just wanted to add to that.
I want to get a little bit deeper, a little bit more tactical on three things. You talked about ICP. I want to go through the process of how do you define that when you start a company or you launch a new vertical, you're shooting a ton of bullets and then you have to dial in and shoot cannonballs. So I want to talk about how you identify the ICP. I also want to talk about sequences. So what does that actually mean? What's the messaging? How do you define the messaging in those sequences? I know this is a lot to cover, the whole sales process. And then the close, how you go about those closes when it's not something from a quick door-to-door, like tomorrow or the next day. It's not this option close. It's much more in depth than that. So can we go through that process?
Yeah, if you have another week or two.
We're going to need a part 2 and part 3.
So what was the first part of that question?
So we're going to do
start with
ICP
part
and then sequences, which has messaging in it, and then the close.
Let me make a note. Okay.
Someone can come away from this podcast and say, oh man, now I can hone in on my ICP, put my sequences together and know how to close. Like, it's going to be massive value.
Well, what I told you, remember, because you're like, I think ideally these are the people I'm going to talk to. I said, great, we'll talk to them, right? Do research, right? I said, you need to have at least 30 conversations. And I think I put that number, like, let's have 30 conversations to see if it's viable, right? Let's have conversations to see what their pain points are. Are they the same? Are they different? Is this, what we want to do? Because at that point, you just had an idea, right? You had an idea and you said, I know this is going to work, but without even talking to anybody, right? And I think we made some pivots after that, right? And so, have conversations.
That's a nice way to say it. We gave the investors their money back, let the team go, and close the company. Yeah. Some pivots.
That's the sales way to say it. We made some pivots. We made some adjustments. It's always a positive, right? We learned some things and we made some adjustments. And so, I mean, that's really the golden key. I mean, figuring out what you are trying, in thinking ahead, right? who are these people? Are they the buyers? Are they people that will champion this for us? Is it the right vertical? Do they have the budgets? Those essential discovery questions that everybody should have of, just figuring out, BANT is the simplest, budget, authority, need, timeline, right? Do the discovery, have those 30 conversations or more, and see, does any of it make sense? Are these people excited? Are they moving forward? Are they progressing? Or do we need to go into different areas, right? And so that is one thing that you can very simply implement. And, if it's not working, again, it's not a strikeout. It's not a failure. I was off basis, but I learned something, right? It's only a failure if you didn't learn anything and you don't apply it. Because you might say, they introduced me to other departments, or they might know other companies, or there is a pain point there. I was just looking at it the wrong way, right? And so figuring that out with your ICP, and then, once that's developed, move into your sequence. And I'm assuming your sequence is outreach and how you contact these people, or
let's talk about more on the outreach side rather than on the marketing side.
That is, sequence is it's always changing, right? And today it's getting so much harder because people are getting berated by emails and calls and LinkedIn messages and everything else. But I assume there's lots of different tactics that you can take, and making sure you're creative, and again, addressing the problems and the pains and challenges of these people. What I would recommend with the sequences is there are so many softwares, even if you're trying to do it on a budget, sales engagement platforms such as, Apollo, HubSpot, SalesLoft, Outreach. There's lots of them. There's a couple that are more expensive that would probably be more applicable if you're a larger size company, but even as a small company, you should get these enacted right now. So you get out of Rolodexes, right? You get out of that manual, because doing manual prospecting, following up with your cell phone, following up with an email, and then 6 weeks later, like, oh, I should email that person again, right? That's not going to get anybody. So being able to go in and say, I think...
But it feels like you're working hard.
It does. It feels
you're
like
getting
it.
blisters.
It does.
Yes.
But you might be getting blisters, but you could be rubbing two stones together, right? So it's how do you... You're not going to get a fire, but you will get the blisters. And so, just look at the tools in place. As I said, the TQ of how do you implement these tools to make people successful. So I think the latest statistic out there right now is it takes 10 to 13 touches. I think it was 6 and then went up to 8. It might even be 10 touches before somebody responds to you, right? And so you're not going to get that type of engagement or interaction with individuals unless you have some type of sales engagement tool in place. And as a sales leader, I think one of the best things you can do is stay up to date in technologies. If you fall behind and you don't know how to leverage new technologies and you're not staying on the cutting edge, you're going to fall behind as well. And your team is, and ultimately success isn't going to be there. So, from an entrepreneur or a founder standpoint, if you don't have a sales leader, I would research tools, right? Make your life easier. We are in the digital age. There's tools out there that will help make your life easier. You don't have to go put in newspaper ads or anything like that. You'll have products that can support what you're trying to accomplish.
And so to recap what you said, first, when identifying the ideal customer profile, your solution and the budget, the authority, the need, and the timeline of the person you're talking to have an intimate relationship. They have to have the problem. They have to be able to pay for it. And that's going to help you identify what your ideal customer profile is. Once you have that identified, then your messaging has to solve that problem, but it can't just be in one avenue. Use technology, leverage it. I'm curious, as far as outbound versus inbound, do you feel like there's a rule of thumb for percent of budget that should be spent on marketing to generate inbound leads versus outbound attempts?
No, and again, I think it's really dependent on your business and the vertical you're going after. For instance, I think as an early startup, a lot of inbound is great. So a lot of marketing spend because you're not going to have a lot of headcount, right? You're not going to have a lot of salespeople. So trying to fill that funnel as much as possible to get as many at bats is going to be huge, right? It's going to be very beneficial for you and the company. However, my current company right now, it's the first company I've worked at that's been in ed tech, right? Worked in education. And more so than any other company that I've been at, education is a lot of word of mouth. There's a lot of relationships. So if you know this person in education and they like your product, they're going to share it with 10 other people. And we have a large amount of our business has been through word of mouth, and word of mouth only comes from building relationships. So we're doing a lot of travel, a lot of the road, a lot of in-person, and a lot more so than I have done at my previous companies that have done 90% virtual, right? You go in for the big meetings, but now we're on the road a lot trying to engage and meet the people where they're at. And we get a ton of our business that way. And so it's really figuring out who is your customer. Again, your ICP. Are they more relationship focused? Are they more ROI focused? Are they, what is their focus? So that plays hugely into the sequence and how you go after prospecting into these people and how you divvy up that budget.
We're for sure not going to get through all of this, but once you get the interest, once they accept and say, yeah, I'd love to have a call, you go through discovery call, then you demo, and then you go through this process that ends in the close. What's the difference in that process for an SMB to an enterprise?
I think it largely should be the same for both. I mean, SMB, there could be much more, transactional purchases where they've already done 90% of the research and, they're just coming to you to purchase. However, I do think the close, if you follow these steps, right, we were talking about MedPick at lunch, right, where you know your metrics, your economic buyer, who's your champion, what their budget, what their timelines are. At this point, in a positive way, you've kind of painted them into a corner, right? You've put them in a position where if they say no or don't go forward, you've painted a picture that they are making the wrong decision by not moving forward with your product. So you are in a position where you said, I was talking to a guy once where every time there was a system outage, he had to work nights and weekends, right? And when he implemented the product, he was so thankful. He's like, I'm not going to have to, miss a weekend working Friday, Saturday, Sunday to get the network back online. And so how do you get that emotional, tangible of, hey, if you don't implement, you're going to have to still work nights and weekends right when that happens. You're going to miss time with your family, with your girlfriend, whatever it is. And so that is the close, right? When you're at the close, if you're then trying to sell and close, you've done it wrong. You have completely missed all the prior steps because you should be closing the whole entire time. And when you're at close, it's just signing the paper, because building up to that point, you've realized their pains. You've demonstrated where the return on value is, right? Where they're going to see a benefit, whether it's financial or time or whatever it might be, and how you're going to get it done, how you're going to implement it, and why it's going to be successful. So at the close, you shouldn't have to close, right? So that's my philosophy, is by the end, you've sold them on the value, and it's just getting through that procurement process or whatever you need to do to clear the check.
So valuable. Thanks, Soren.
Yeah. I love that, because I'm thinking here, and I totally believe in that as well. The best demos that I've ever had, I didn't have to ask for the close at the end. I just said, here are the next steps. I'm sending you the service agreement. There's no question that they're gonna move forward. It's obvious. Soren, I want to hear I want to ask you one more question, and I think Court he has a question that he always asks, and I love hearing your answer about that. You talked about the mistakes that you've made, and you talked about hiring. I want to hear the opposite of that. What are the best salespeople that you've ever worked with? What do they have in common?
Yeah, it's a great question. Really, a great salesperson is like an entrepreneur. They're like a CEO, right? They own their business, and they make it personal. This number is my business's number, right? This business isn't successful unless I hit my number and my quota, and they go above and beyond to try to hit that. I like to describe, top sales reps as a quarterback. They are leading the offense. They're guiding where people are going, what they're doing, because ultimately you're not going to be successful unless you pull in multiple pieces of it, right? Unless you pull in the owner or engineering or customer success, right? You're going to have multiple different areas that are intangible to create deals and get that value when it's time to close, right? So those types of people that own their business, right? They don't just take it as I'm another wheel in the cog. I'm within these lanes, and I think that's the superpower of salespeople is you can create your own future and your own livelihood. Your pay can drastically be influenced by how much work you put in. And so those people that go above and beyond and put in the hard work and leverage the resources around them are ultimately going to be successful. If you do that, you're going to be successful. And if you're not, there's probably a serious issue with your the way the structure of your sales org is set up. Because if you are putting in effort, if you're getting the blisters, if you're at the right product, you should be successful. And so, just be tenacious. The grit and all that stuff leads to a great salesperson, not somebody that's timid to go outside the norms to support a client or a prospect.
I love that.
All right, so last question. You're 9 months into your new career. You're not getting any sales.
Yeah.
You're able to call back in time and talk to yourself. What advice do you give yourself?
Keep going. It's just wait. But you're just saying right there at that instance, at that desk, what I'm thinking, should I leave? Yeah. I would just say, what your goals are. You know where you want to be. You know that you want to progress. You want to make, provide for your family. And this is the path. This is how you do it. Just believe in yourself. Have trust in, like you said, your gut. Because this is where you're supposed to be. This is what you're going to do. And don't have any hesitations. Again, I'll leave with, burn the boat, right? Be all in. Burn the boat. There's no way back for you. This is the only way forward, and you're either going to make it work or, you're just going to be stranded. So you have to trudge forward and make it work. And at the end, it's going to be worth it. Whether you're successful or not, you're going to learn something from it. And again, I think hopefully that's the lesson in something that I stand by is just learn from it, right? I can't tell you how many lessons I've learned, positive and negative. Just learn from what you're going through because, life is short and you're going to have lots of opportunities and lots of experiences, and it's all going to be to your benefit. It's all going to be towards, helping you structure a better future. Because at this point in time, right, everything in the past doesn't matter. It's just what you do moving forward is what matters and is going to help you be successful. So that's what I would tell myself. And I don't know if it's to have 4 kids, but I'm just kidding. I love all my children. I do.
It's crazy that the process actually works. Like I heard it so many times and I hoped that it would work when I was younger. And then to see you grind, you put in the hours, you put in the time, you listen to your gut. It happens.
Yeah. Take a look at any speaker, anybody that has anything worthwhile to say. They went through a hard time, right? There was a point where they were at their lowest and they just stuck with it, right? Think about all the stories you don't hear where people just quit in the middle, right? There's probably 100 times more of those stories. And so it really is just sticking with it. And as hard as that and as simple as it is to say, stick with it, right? And just keep moving forward because that's the only way that you're going to be successful. You can't be successful if you keep quitting and starting over because you lose all the progress that you made. Thanks, Soren.
Yeah, this has been so insightful. Thanks, man.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Is there anything that you wish we would have asked?
I think there is one thing if you want to edit this in. When I was at Workfront, we didn't talk about the reason I left. Yeah. Just real quickly. So I was in a position where I was super successful. I was ready for that advancement. I wanted to move up the ladder, and I had people willing to promote me and move me to that next team and get more into that area. And I had a VP over me that wasn't my biggest fan, right? He wasn't my biggest fan, and he kept passing me over for these promotions and these jobs. And finally, one day we had this group training with about 60 people. We had one of our senior executives in the room, and he put out the offer. He said, "Hey, if my door is open. If anybody ever wants to come talk to me and wants advice, come talk to me." And
That's the VP that offered that.
No,
Oh,
it was his VP's VP.
okay.
So it was like 3 levels above him, right? It was way above him in the organization. And so a week went by, and I kept thinking about that offer. And so I slacked him and said, "Hey, I really want some advice. Can I come by your office?" He said, "Yeah, sure." And so I met with him, and I talked through this thing. So I was like, "Hey, I feel like I keep getting passed over." And he told me, believe in yourself, right? The same message, believe in yourself. And if you think you're stuck, jump the ladder somewhere else. Don't make a lateral move, but jump the ladder and get to where that you should be, right? And we kept having conversations after a couple weeks. And one of the things he said to me as well is he presented to a group of about 60 people. And he said, out of those 60 people, he said, you are the one individual, you are the only person that took me up on that offer. And he goes, nobody else has even stepped by my office or talked to me or tried to get any information. And so it's try to get information from other people, right? He gave me a lot of great insights, a lot of great information that I leveraged today, and ultimately made the pivot to SaltStack because he, gave me the confidence that wouldn't be a bad move. And it changed my career. So have mentors, and also take people up. If they say, let's grab lunch, let's talk about it, try to pick their brains because they've been there, they've done it. So it's always good to have those type of people to speak with and pick their brains.
You're always recruiting, always looking for good people. If someone wants to come work with you, get mentored by you, trained by you, how do they reach you?
Yeah, just go on our website, reach out to me on LinkedIn. Available. We have lots of job openings posted. So yeah, feel free to go to our website or just follow up.
Awesome. Thanks, Soren.
Thanks.
It's a wrap.
You've been watching Hello Grow, the world's #1 growth podcast. I'm Cortland Brady.
I'm Carlos Souza. If you've watched this video so far, it means that you like the content that we're putting out and the people we're interviewing.
We're putting together a community of business leaders, entrepreneurs, and sales leaders. You liking, subscribing, and sharing this content helps us reach those that are going on that journey.
If you want to be a part of this community, please subscribe, smash that like button, and turn on those notifications.